Hello and welcome back. Today we will be doing a starting steps video here as Finland. Now Finland is a very interesting country. It is a smaller European country and we kind of have the normal sorts of things we have in that we have a small population. We're going to be very migration oriented kind of at the start, and we're going to be really focusing on economics a lot at the start, economics and diplomacy. And the reason for that is kind of the more unique feature about Finland, which is that they're a personal union. Now personal union is a more unique or far less common subject type, which is really bad, and it's really bad because we cannot raise our autonomy. We cannot become something other than a personal union. It is prevented from this type of interaction. We have to not be a personal union type, and so we can't just try and hang out in Russia's sphere and get people to support our independence and then use that support independence to beat up Russia without actually getting independence from Russia, like we did with the Krakow run, or a strategy that worked there. Instead, here we have to decide to stay and make use of Russian migrants, or leave, and become fully independent. We have very small pop, and so we will need migrants from somewhere, and so this is going to be, kind of one of the situations. We're also going to be focused mainly on economics because as a personal union, we can't expand, we can't declare wars, and so we are going to be... That's what we're going to do, except with the economy. We are going to be cranking the economy up like a big loud car, and we're going to be talking quite a bit about why, as a subject, you want to stay on interventionism. Also, as per the loud car outside, just kidding, it's not a loud car, it's actually a tank. We will, as a larger sort of goal for the run, we will, of course, be going for the achievement, I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it sounds the same as the loud car outside. I mean, the loud tank outside. But tanky? Yeah, it is the loud tank outside. Starting as Finland, produce at least 100 units of tanks. So we're going to be in this run for the long run. But also, this run should go pretty quickly because a lot of it's just going to be waiting around and ecoing up in kind of the states that we have. Now, we have a few state bonuses. Logging bonuses are particularly good, so we're going to be focused on that early. And then after that, we will kind of sort of transition to better resource orientation, with the iron mines that we have available. I think we have a smattering of iron that's, pretty substantive, but we cannot expand at all. So we're just going to be kind of chilling and trying to acquire diplomatic allies who will eventually help us to break free from the motherhood of Russia. One of the distinctive features of playing a really small country is you industrialize very quickly and you run out of peasants very quickly. We only have 200,000 peasants here at game start, which, to be fair, is double what we have unemployed, but we will be able to liberalize and industrialize very quickly. We will stay on interventionism, the main reason being, if we go on to laissez-faire, Russia will be able to buy our public buildings with their investment pool for much cheaper than it actually costs for us to construct these buildings. And so we want to stay on interventionism and never put any building we build publicly up for sale. So it's also going to be preferable that we let the AutoCube build as many buildings as possible and we don't build them ourselves, because without getting too in kind of the weeds right now, you would prefer private ownership to public ownership, that is government ownership, because government dividends, when they are not all being reinvested, delete money. They all get reinvested under laissez-faire, but we are going to be executing a strategy where we try and let the AutoCube do a lot of the constructing as much as we can, but we will be able to reform very quickly. We do start off on national supremacy, so the #1 priority, because we have a reasonable looking kind of situation, is we are going to swap off of it. Now, we cannot do any abdication cheese because this is not our king. I mean, he's our king, but not my king, you know what I mean? This is Russia's king, and so we can't have him abdicate the throne, and this is another kind of penalty of the personal union, is you lose access to the very strong character interaction. But what we will do is we will look to get onto racial segregation here, and under racial segregation we will accept more pops from Russia, and since we have no migration or migration controls at game start, we will be in really good shape to be able to siphon off these migrants. Now, we start with tenant farmers and interventionism, so most of kind of the bad start situations we're completely fine with. We also start with state religion, which is not too optimal, and as far as church, we do have the Church of Sweden, which, if I recall correctly, does give a company bonus, which is pretty nice. It doesn't have, I know there's some unique bonuses for Sweden, but I don't think we have those in particular. We just have normal looking IGs, and so our overall strategy is going to evolve, kind of of forcing migration. And so right now we're not using any migration edicts because it's not too important, but we're just going to have a bunch of edicts here in the capital, which has a third of our population, so the promote social mobility will be quite effective. But once we get the migration edict, we are just going to slap down a migration edict in probably every single one of our states. There is 5 of them, which is the magic number where you stop incurring the malice for mass migrations, as long as they can all be potentially mass migrated too, which unfortunately they can't. In order, the minimum value you have to be at is 20 for arable land. So anything with over 20 arable land, we will probably use a mass migration, which is looking to actually be 3 of our states, which is not as much as was less than half of what we'd hoped for. More spears for Gondor. Diplomatically speaking, we've enabled interests in both England and France. We don't have to worry about expansion because we can't declare wars anyways, and we will be improving relations with them. We are already improving relations with Prussia, although Prussia is going to start out very friendly towards Russia, and so they will not likely be an ally kind of at the start. The people we are likely to find allies in are going to be Great Britain, very likely, France, powerful enough, but somewhat possible, and the Ottomans will also maybe be able to be an ally, but they're really not strong enough, and so they're not going to be particularly useful. So from this point, we will just be mainly focused on getting good relations with as many of these kind of 5 as possible, including Austria in the mix as well. And this will be mostly what we will be doing diplomatically. There's not a whole lot we can do. We can't make trade agreements. We can just try and improve relations and then hope that we will be able to, at some point, request to support independence. Now, this for this interaction, there is going to be stuff with ideological differences of our government. This has to do with who we have in government at any given time. So as long as we maintain all the IGs or prevent all the IGs from getting marginalized, we can just mix and match whatever IGs we need in order to make that work, especially as long as we are still on an oligarchy, because we will not have political parties. So staying on oligarchy here in particular will probably actually be pretty useful, because if we needed to have, let's say, exactly the landowners and the Church of Sweden in power, it's a whole lot easier when you don't have political powers to be able to set this up than if you had a political party that required the armed forces to be with them. Now you're going to incur more of a malice. And so, diplomatically speaking, I don't think we're going to want to move off of oligarchy. Maybe there's a chance we want to, because, to be honest, it is pretty bad for legitimacy overall, but we also wouldn't mind a really powerful industrialist, kind of class that's going to help us to construct a whole lot, because this investment pool contribution efficiency is, of course, an excellent bonus to have. So until we get atmospheric engine, we are going to, which we are researching first, we are going to focus on the logging in terms of the construction, and we are not going to put anything on auto queue. The reason being is, as the investment pool actually accumulates money, we want the investment pool to use as much of our construction as possible. Now, it's not going to use any right now while we are on the 10 construction. 0 control goes to the investment pool, but once we build our first construction sector, this will unlock it, and we can let the government construction idle in order to allow the private construction to take over. Also, what we are doing is we are going to engage in our kind of first little bit of subject interaction, is we are going to request, not market control, that'd be catastrophic, we are going to request support regime from Russia, which will give us plus 20 legitimacy if they say yes. Now, they are very likely to say yes, they're 94% chance. We're going to roll the dice. I suppose we might just restart the run if they say no, but this is going to allow us to be in the acceptable bracket rather than an unacceptable bracket, and I don't think we're really going to get independence in an immediate fashion from Russia. I think we actually kind of want to hover in here in terms of how things are going, kind of in the middle, and just maintain a little bit of flexibility until we can get someone to support us. But if Russia starts improving relations with us, which they did, we will probably look to start damaging relations. That way we can maintain a little bit of a status quo, although I think we will let them, well, they'll improve us above this minus 30 point anyways, and we'll move down from poor. This might trigger, damaging relations can trigger a catalyst, which is not ideal, but we don't want to allow them to get super positive relations, because otherwise there will be a very long lag on when we can improve relations. But at the same time, if we have all right, if we have good relations, it's more likely that we can get, you know, stuff like that to go through. In theory, if we were to, wanting to optimize, we would probably actually want to re-roll the run in order to get this plus 20 legitimacy, but we're just going to continue on through here. But this is something you can do. We can also request for knowledge sharing at a later point. I don't think we have access to it right now, but the knowledge sharing will also be really good for us. We cannot do it because Russia doesn't have more technologies than us, but if they acquire more technologies than us, we can request knowledge sharing, and that would also be useful because a lot of our knowledge is going to be coming from you know, getting tech spread. To that end, we also start off with 2 universities. Now, I don't think we're going to delete the universities right now because we are relying on the Intelligentsia to pass laws, and lo and behold, there are some academics here. Academics are overwhelmingly Intelligentsia, and so we don't want to delete them right yet, but I do think after we pass racial segregation, we might delete these because we would much rather have construction sectors than universities, especially when we are as small as this, or we'll at least delete one of these universities. Well, Russia's just looking a little schizophrenic because they just decided to support our regime, and so, okay, that's fine, I guess. They also exempted us from service, and they're improving relations, so we are going to see our liberty desire fall quite precipitously, which is maybe a bit of a mixed bag for us, but we can always, if we need to, expel the diplomats of Russia, or we have to, our liberty desire has to get over a certain point to expel diplomats. I forgot about this. But this is a tool that we can use if we can get this high enough, but we will want to keep damaging relations, or we will want to at least start damaging relations because there's a whole lot that is now lowering our liberty desire because Russia kind of just threw the bag at us in terms of using every tool possible to try and decrease liberty desire, which we're kind of fine with because now we're back on kind of a much more accepted kind of route here. I think we're going to lower taxes all the way down to here. This is a common strategy. If you're going to be using the 10 construction, in a lot of spots, you should just, you know, kind of keep the taxes low. And the whole reason we don't have a positive balance is, of course, these universities that we kind of start with at the very beginning, but we have a decent chance now to get racial segregation here through. Unfortunately, the buildings we have at Game Start are not government-owned or privately owned, but instead they are locally owned. And we do see Russia kind of swoop in here and buy 2 of these buildings, or both of these buildings here in the furniture manufactories. So that means the furniture manufactories that are using just a few of our very, very precious pops, we do not have a lot of population. These furniture factories, they're getting a total kind of value creation of roughly 3.1k, which is a combination of the weekly balance and the wages. However, 2,000 of that is going over to Russia. So in theory, we could sabotage this with just bad PMs, you know, to try and damage them and get them to employ elsewhere. Maybe this is a little bit of a strategy that we could execute, but this is very critically why the buildings that we are building ourselves, you can see the local workforce, this can be bought by Russia, and this creates problems for us. But the buildings we build ourselves, Grand Duchy of Finland, we do not ever want to set up for privatization because we will encounter a situation where a large majority of the stuff that's tying up our pops so they can't even work is in fact going to be like Russia is tying up a ton of our pops, and also the amount of construction it costs to build a furniture manufactory, roughly in terms of the amount of ducats it requires. Now I know it's in pounds, not ducats, but I like saying ducats. Roughly speaking, it's going to be a third of the cost of purchasing the building from the investment pool, and because Russia will have investment pool lying in wait, we don't want to let any of our buildings be privatized. To that end, this is going to be the last building we build, actively speaking, and then we are going to swap up to having a construction sector. Now, we can afford this, but we kind of can't afford this, but the very purpose of this construction sector isn't getting the extra construction. This is not going to be the main idea. The main idea is that as soon as we have the construction sector, this will unlock our private queue, and our private queue has accumulated a little bit of cash, enough to be able to build a singular building. They must know of his depravity, and with this singular building, or being able to build themselves, the private queue will seize control of all 12 of the construction if we let it idle, whereas if we would let it idle while just on 10 construction, the private queue won't do anything. And so this is going to be a very kind of important play pattern for us here at the very start. That way we can make use of our investment pool, because our investment pool is getting contributed to both the stuff that is owned by our financial districts, but also the stuff that is government owned, because half of the value goes to government dividends, but the other half of the value under interventionism, which is what we're using, is in fact fact going to go to government dividends reinvestment, and so this will go to the purchase of new buildings. We'll raise taxes, I think, considering even on min taxes we're not in a bracket anyways where we can be over this unacceptable point, which is unfortunate. Even with Russia's help, it's just too illegitimate to quit it. The traditionalists plus the land reformer, they don't exactly get along. So, as you can see, we are letting our queue idle, and instead, the logging camps are being produced in Kuopio, and they are being produced by the private queue. Also, very critically, since we can't sell any of our buildings that we can produce ourselves as the government, we don't ever want to sell this because then Russia could buy it because they're our overlord. Because we never ever want to sell it, this is the only way for us to get hands in the hand of private interests, to get them in the hands of financial districts. They have to construct them ourselves. So this is going to be a play pattern that we are going to be using for this very kind of phase. As long as we're underneath Russia, this is what we're going to be using, is as long as we have investment pool kind of available, we will be really aggressive about letting our construction idle and instead allowing the private queue to take over, and instead we will try and focus more on government buildings, and also the private queue will have a lot more money because instead of using the investment pool you know, to be buying buildings, since there will be none available to buy, they can only use it to construct buildings, and you see they're adding yet another logging camp. Also, to the ends of improving relations with France, or improving attitude, we are giving them trade routes, and the trade routes we are giving them to both France and Great Britain is we're going to be exporting logging, because this is going to be really efficient for us because we have the 20% throughput here. Now, it's not that efficient per worker, but we're hoping once we get racial segregation passed that we will be able to, you know, get a lot of workers from Russia. Although we maybe should have picked the other option here. Really kind of unfortunate that we are on 2 setbacks already on introduction, and so this might not be feasible. If this fails, though, we will just try and pass cultural exclusion, and that will be fine for us as well. So, we have failed to pass racial segregation, trying to pass cultural exclusion. Surprise, surprise, it's triggering a revolution. We would actually just want the rev to pop faster, and Mr. General Raiden, we will say he's disliked, he's a jingoist, we'll say smell you later to him, and maybe trigger the revolution there. No, well, either way it will trigger, and Russia will help us out, mummy Russia, so we don't really care too much. It's not like we have also a lot of, you know, auto constructions that we've developed, and so we'll just be able to, in this way, kind of have a bit of a time. Now that the revolution's popped, we don't have a revolutionary movement anymore, and we have the loudest of cars outside, but unfortunately we actually kind of don't like these guys marginalized, because there's something we actually wanted to do, which is that taking a look at France here, and we're going to be keeping an eye on this the entire time, we see their government has the Catholic Church in it. We also see, if we request of they will support our independence anyways. So previously the ideological differences of our government, they were at like -12, and it was exactly enough to pip it, but it does seem that our relations are now set that they're amicable. We will just be able to request to support independence, but this is going to be a tool that we're keeping an eye on for these kind of bigger powers, is can we get them to support our independence, and if the only barrier to that is the ideological differences, we can swap around our government. So we don't want to kneecap anyone, and we take a look at Great Britain. We only have a -47. We can't overcome that with the ideological differences, so it won't make a difference. It's because their attitude towards us is really negative. Hopefully Spain doesn't break that, or France doesn't break that by becoming our ally here, but we will not even mobilize. We're just going to let Mummy handle this, and this is going to be good for us because now there's no opposition, so we will get faster passes. Oh, there is still opposition. These guys are still happy enough with us. Well, it do be like that sometimes. Well, hopefully we get that through. And Farmers to Factories already finished just 5 years into the game, so we've done a whole lot for our people. I think we would rather have interest group pop traction for the Industrialists here, but this should be very, very quick because they only have a couple battalions versus, of course, all of Russia, and so this is going to allow us to pass laws faster by allowing this rev to force, or forcing this rev. And the very critical thing is we are going to be basically out of pops, and so we desperately need to try and get some migration off of Russia in order to keep economically developing, and our economic growth is definitely stunted by the fact that they own a whole bunch of buildings. Now, my understanding is if these were split, wow, they get occupied instantly. If these were split, if it was a split state, if we were just a single state, us revving would actually brick all the Russian ownership, but that is not the case, and they still own a bunch of buildings all over the place. So already the migration is gone from 0 up to around 700. We have in particular put in migration edicts on our 3 southernmost states, the ones that have over 20 arable land, which will help us for mass migration. We don't have as good multipliers as we'd like because we are not getting a multiplier from being a major power or a great power, but the greener grass applies both a flat amount and a multiplier, and so this will be more than enough for us to be able to start getting some migrants here, and that's quite a nice little number. Annualized, it's going to be 34k, which is going to be, in terms of a proportion of our economy or our population, that's, what is that, close to 6k or 6% or something like this. It's going to be a big enough percentage, or I guess, yeah, it is close to 6%, that's going to compound hugely and allow us to come up. This is going to be the main way in which we are able to grow and able to keep adding buildings. We haven't seen Russia, we've been trying to keep an eye out for it, we haven't seen them, engaging in too many construction in our place, and it does seem that Austria-Hungary, which is now formed, and that doesn't form that often, does have some sort of agreement with Russia in terms of mutual investment, which in some sense is going to be a little bit bad for us because it's going to be less likely that the relations have soured. We've kind of switched off of France because we are getting positive relations from support independence to try and work on Prussia, and we're going to keep rotating it around as best we can. One of the problems is we don't have enough interests to also have an interest in Anatolia to work on the Ottomans, so we're going to have to make do with this for now, where, well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we can actually move our England interest because England will have an interest in France, and I think that doesn't brick our relations with the UK, if I'm not mistaken, and so maybe we can kind of start to focus on the Ottoman Empire, following getting, at the very least, up to cordial relations with Prussia. Again, the major problem being here that they start out, in particular, liking and being friends with Russia. So we went for pharmaceuticals really early, kind of in terms of the tech, before we even got railroads. The reason being is we were probably going to go for not total separation because we don't want to marginalize are devout, but we were going to go for freedom of conscience, and also in this way we can make them a little bit happier with the Church of Sweden, giving us a little bit more authority. We could probably use this for a bit of a tax thing, but it is going to be a very critical one for our kind of migration-oriented strategy, because public health insurance is going to raise SOL, which is going to be really significant, and decrease mortality, so we're going to look to max this out as quickly as possible, because what we care about right now is POPs, and this is going to be kind of one of the more powerful law passes we could do for handling this. Also, we got pretty good laws in. We maybe could go back to land-based taxation for the purposes of going on to prop tax, but prop tax wouldn't even yield us that much money, or they wouldn't even yield us any more money right now. And I have a sneaking suspicion we are going to get a really early trade unionist in, just by kind of going for, after we go railways, labor movement, and I think we will probably be able to get trade unionists out and about anyways. But I think that this is more than even normal, because health insurance or the health systems are particularly powerful. For a start like this, where we're small, we can't expand, and we need migration, it's going to be pretty good. We're also making a ton of money. You can see that we are letting our private queue take the wheel, and our private queue is slowly losing money. I think we can afford another construction sector, but we are going to have to kind of eyeball this because it is a little bit of a weird interaction, just letting the private queue take control of everything, because if this investment pool is draining really, really, really fast, then this means we over-added construction, and we really want to kind of avoid a situation where we're adding and removing a whole bunch of construction sectors, and so we do want to let it pool up a little bit before adding to it. I think that now we can afford our third construction sector here. We're on iron frame buildings, so that's going to be good, and we are mainly focused on building in the capital. In particular, in the capital, we do have an edict for manufacturing, so our auto queue should be picking up a little bit more here, and the capital is, of course, still attracting a whole bunch of migrants, in addition to the regular pop growth, which will also be helped by the decreased mortality of the health system. So this is looking like it's actually going to be a really long haul run, because despite us kind of being aggressive on cooldown to ask for stuff that we know Russia will refuse, they are decaying us down. Now, part of this is, you know, they're giving us stuff that, well, we kind of want or find useful, like the support regime, but they are decaying us down into a liberty desire bracket, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. Big problem of this is that we are entangled, and so this is going to be a bit of a problem. So we might have to really, really try and cannibalize them from, you know, the inside out, and have it's looking like it's going to actually be really difficult to get independence, because even though we could win with France, you know, against Russia, the problem is we're not even allowed to declare unless we can get ourselves to be disloyal. And so as long as they are pretty aggressive about improving relations with us, which they have been this whole time, there's really not a lot we can do, because we need to get into a lower relations bracket. So we're going to keep damaging relations with them. We maybe could have been a little bit more precise with doing this on cooldown, but since we noticed our liberty desire was trending downward, we started to get really aggressive about asking for stuff. And so, you know, as soon as the cooldown is created, we will ask for, you know, request market control. They're going to say no. We can't ask for increased autonomy until we get up to 75, and we're just going to get decayed down very, very low here. Hopefully they don't try and annex us, which of course would be a run killer. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, they are not allowed to annex us as a puppet, so we will kind of have unlimited time in order to try and do this. Also notable as the puppet relation, we didn't really focus on this at the beginning, but we don't actually owe them subject payments, so this allows us to kind of eco up behind a little bit better than we otherwise would be able to. We are also going to pass a very early property to women, because kind of the story of the tape for us is we can't really improve, or we can't get enough workers, and so the extra workforce ratio is going to be really, really valuable, especially because such a large percentage of our growth is going to be from workers. We're also really aggressively pushing up the institutions. I think we could even push the law enforcement another level. The problem is we will have to pay for an extra government administration. We are also losing money kind of for the first time in a little bit, because the auto queue is not able to keep up, but as soon as it will put something in, we will kind of be making a little bit of money. But I do think we just have slightly too much construction. We do see this coming in, so this is kind of mixed bag about this, because they will occupy our pops, but then they'll own the building. But I think we're going to come in, we're going to delete one construction sector. I think 20 is a little bit better for us. We could also decrease wages here a little bit. I think I probably don't do this as often as I should, decreasing government wages on these. In particular, it does make it harder to get, you know, the trade unions and stuff demarginalized, and I think if it's marginally close, the best decision is to have it at neutral. But if it's not close, you know, lower government wages can allow you to support more construction sectors. I think we're going to just kind of stick it at neutral for now, but this is something we're going to keep an eye on, and is maybe something I'm underperforming in terms of strategy. But Monument to the Tsar, we will say no, because that's not really our Tsar, not our Tsar. A statue of the monarch, which monarch? Nikolai Romanov. Let's say no, even though we always choose the other option for that every single time. But property to women's going to go through relatively easily. Our overall situation here is looking pretty good. And as far as research goes, we're going for labor movement so that we could demarginalize the trade unions. The trade unions already at 2% clout. As far as the peasant situation is going, the peasants are there's still some of them kicking around, but that should get easier for us to get rid of them, especially once we get higher levels of education. It is church education, but that's overall not a big deal. We're more concerned with the education access than the clout we are giving to the church. Alright, finally a bit of luck. Russia decided they don't like us anymore, and they've switched to domineering. Now, if I recall correctly, they can't annex us anyways, so this is kind of useless for them. But with them damaging relations, we should be able to get it down from the poor bracket, which we have been having trouble this entire time getting to. We could also have these cooldowns back available, so we can request market control. They will, of course, say no. This will raise our liberty desire. We can request support regime. They will, of course, say no, because they're domineering. And this will also raise our liberty desire, so we are making a little bit of progress in that regards. We also have Sweden supporting us now, which is kind of important to note. And I don't even think we try and get full independence here. If we do fight Russia, we would love to have the UK support, because with the UK support, we basically would not lose. We do have to keep in mind that if we take a look here, Defensive Pact. This is a bit of a problem, because I do believe the Defensive Pact triggers when we try and declare for independence. And, you know, these other three are not very significant, although Oh, that's not Circassia. That's Circassia. I thought that was Circassia for a second, which does have an insane military bonus. But France can't beat up both Russia and Austria-Hungary, especially if they don't send, and we have 5 troops. So we're going to have to try and figure something else out. You know, even though we're putting ourselves more in a position to be able to do something about this, because our Liberty Desire is now going up, this is going to... it's still going to be difficult because we don't win this war. So we maybe wait until Austria is tied up and France is not, something like this, and then maybe we have a little bit of an opening. So unfortunately, we do not have enough Liberty Desire to go for independence right now, because now would be the perfect time, because we see Russia is, you know, along with Austria-Hungary, is fighting Prussia. Now, I'm assuming Prussia declared and is the aggressor in a little bit of one of these skis, because they don't know how to read what a defensive pact is, and they can't fight Russia and Austria, so Prussia is just falling on their own sword, and is going to lose leadership to Austria-Hungary, which is unfortunate, because Austria-Hungary is kind of, you know, blocked together with Russia, but now would be freaking perfect if we could drag France and now also the Ottomans, you know, who are also supporting our independence, in addition to Sweden, all in a war with Russia. The problem is, of course, our Liberty Desire. Not quite high enough yet. It is now trending down as well, so we are going to make sure that we will be damaging relations, and this might require some micro, because we cannot, even if they're not improving relations, as soon as we get to -50, it exits our thing. We need to be at -50 to actually decay, to be able to decay our Liberty Desire. Unfortunately, this is the threshold at which going from poor to cold relations is going to be a bit of a thing, and so this is actually going to be incredibly tedious, because as soon as we get to -50, what's going to happen is our Liberty Desire is going to go away, and then, as soon as we get to -50, we will start increasing our Liberty Desire, but then also our damage relations will go away, and so we will just have to, every tick, every time we hit -50, we will have to reassign it the second it goes down to 49, and I think we can still keep decaying this up, or increasing our Liberty Desire in this way, but it's probably going to be a big part of just waiting on this cooldown to be able to, you know, kind of wait, and we are going to have to wait for 1954, which, to be fair, is only a year from now. Okay, I feel like I'm going a little bit crazy here, because I could have sworn the tooltip said that it was not possible for us to try and increase autonomy, and that we would have to go, you know, all the way to 100, and then once at 100 declare independence, but apparently we can increase autonomy and become a protectorate, which would actually be pretty nice for us, because we would be able to stay in the Russian market and keep siphoning off pops from them. As you can see here, we are getting pops from places like Kiev, Ural, Stavropol, East Karelia, and all kinds of places inside of Russia. And then we would also be able to beat them up a bit and take some of their stuff, and still be able to newly be able to declare wars. We haven't declared a single war, been stuck at Zero the Infamy the entire time, on autopilot, just took an event that gave us, normally you don't choose the Give Infamy option because of infamy, but like we should have chosen the Give Infamy option, and this would put us in good shape. I just don't know if we win the war. We should ask for increased autonomy, I think, anyways, because this will increase our Liberty Desire, and this is kind of what we want. Well, it's increasing either way, but I just don't know if we win. The Ottomans are going to be considerably weaker. Well, actually, wait, what? Ottomans? What have you been eating? Okay, they're still going to be weaker either way. They're still going to be weaker than Austria. France is going to be probably stronger than Russia, but France is always a little bit sketchy. They're actually weaker than Russia. France is always a little bit sketchy because you never know when they're just going to randomly rev. And if France revs while we're trying to, you know, fight for this, I think we just get annexed. Because maybe if my thing is, maybe if you can increase autonomy, maybe you could also just annex us, so that's a little bit spooky, and that would just kill the run. So we're kind of at a critical point. What we're probably going to do is we're going to save, and if it goes catastrophically badly, we're just going to reload. You know, it's kind of the equivalent of just restarting the run. It didn't take us that long to get here, and we haven't really, you know, we've engaged in like the correct economic activity, but a lot of it's just setting up and watching the auto queue build, because we don't want to actively be building as much ourselves as we would otherwise want to, because we cannot sell our kind of government shares of stuff. You can see everything that's blue has been, for the most part, built by the auto queue, and everything that's orange is stuff that we have constructed that we are not going to put up for sale, and all the stuff that's yellow, either Russia constructed or more likely they bought our initial starting buildings, which were locally owned. We did push up the iron mines to level 3, that way we could put in the iron mine company. I thought the iron mine company might be a little bit better than the wood company, because wood's actually not very efficient per pop, and I think we're going to run out of pops relatively soon. We've kind of been sitting at 100k the entire time of peasants, while our gainfully employed has gone up by like 150k, and I was thinking that it's also going to be quite nice, because the other mineral we have, are not restricted to iron alone. We also have a decent amount of lead kind of smattered around. I guess decent amount was maybe a bit ambitious a statement. We have like 10 or 15 lead, but we are going to get that throughput on the lead as well, and I figured that maybe we don't quite engage in as much logging as possible. I think our second company we're going to go for is going to be a tooling company, something like that. And I think for the achievement, just something to keep in mind here is, if I'm not mistaken, we actually have to stay as Finland in order to get this achievement, or it's starting as Finland. Well, so starting as Finland scares me a little bit, because sometimes the achievements aren't exactly as they read. But starting as Finland, we should be able to form, Scandinavia, and Scandinavia would be kind of a big step up from the start here as Finland. So we're going to take a save, and we're going to see about getting, reducing our autonomy here against Russia. Alright, so this just looks super unwinnable. We'll try and fight this out, but I don't think there's little bits and pieces we could do. We don't have enough org on our army that is kind of suited for landings, so they can't even do a naval landing yet, but, France does have a bigger navy. We were planning on kind of landing this backside here, but we can repeatedly try and land any incursion on our capital. The thing is they just have way too big an advantage here that, like, us just being on all defense just can't possibly overcome. They're just pushing through Sweden. They're pushing into the Ottoman Empire here. I suppose the Ottomans are pushing here, but France did not commit anywhere near enough troops for us to be able to reasonably win this. They do have skirmish infantry. This is kind of the great boon relative to the Russian troops, which are not on skirmish, if I recall correctly, what we had checked. Although, yeah, we have line infantry over here, and then these are also on line similarly. But if you're just going to park a 68 stack at, back at home, then this is not going to, kind of work out the way we want. To be fair, this unit might as well just do a landing, because they're just not going to be able to sufficiently defend anyways. But somehow we also get our navy gummed up here, because we're never going to be able to land through that, because France has moved their navy back. So I think we are just going to have to eco up and bide our time and try again a little bit later. We're still going to ask for reduced autonomy, but that's just to increase our liberty desire. But this war is just super hyper unwinnable, which is kind of what we suspected, but we did want to get independence so we could start making moves, rather than just kind of ecoing up quietly in Finland. But I guess ecoing up quietly in Finland is what we're going to have to do. So we're not going to, like, re-roll this entire run, but I'm thinking that the fact that Great Britain was cautious towards us the entire time, and it now is antagonistic because there is a little bit of a play. I think that this is maybe something you re-roll the entire run for, in order to get a bit of a better position, or not having the defense pact with Russia. But as it stands right now, we do see kind of a big play gearing up between Great Britain, Austria, Hungary, and USA is also in here, and Russia. I imagine that this is not going to go too particularly well. They are trying to transfer Egypt, a big yikes, but this is going to accumulate a lot of infamy. So we are hoping that post this war, we can maybe get in with either Prussia, who we are off by about 52 here, in terms of being able to pull them into supporting us, or the UK. The more guys we get help from, the better. We have support currently from the Ottomans, the Swedes, and the French, and so just looking to expand that as we, again, just kind of eco up here a little bit quietly. We're keeping our construction active, but we are making sure we are only putting buildings in the queue if the private queue cannot potentially support this, with the exception of we're adding some barracks to give us more of a readiness kind of position, where we can do some cute landings if we have enough organization. We're probably going to make a second 2-stack navy, and maybe several 2-stack like landing squads to allow us to try and micro really hard. You know, in a situation, you know, just kind of land up here, land over here with Russia. Russia's really vulnerable back here, and so maybe we could win a war that's not so favorable, but I don't think we're winning, you know, Russia-Austria with, unless France commits a lot more troops than they were, which they didn't really commit that many troops. Really, people commit a lot of troops when they are on a front directly, and so Sweden, Ottoman, Austria, and Russia all directly have a front, but France does not. So I think this is one of the reasons they did not contribute as much to the war effort. But we'll see how this kind of shakes out here, and we're hoping that this and Russia also, you know, seemingly acquiring a decent chunk of infamy in this war. I'm hoping that this is going to be enough. They're still relatively reputable. Hoping that this is enough to maybe make it so that Prussia or the UK is willing to back us. So, as a result of the US and the UK raiding a bunch of convoys, Russia has given us our own market, which of course is catastrophic for us. In order to try and mitigate this, we're basically just trading a whole bunch with Russia anyways, and just running land trade routes and looking to source everything that we can, that we have a shortage of. We're looking to source it from Russia because we are not going to have convoys to run any sort of convoy trade. And of course, Russia has a surplus of all the goods we were consuming inside of their market. So, hopefully this won't be too painful. Now we have a little bit of an interesting situation here with the Baltic governance. They're asking us to support their independence. What will happen is if we say yes, if either one of us declares independence, the other one will help them out. I think we're going to say no because we don't want to get randomly pulled into something. But we'll keep in mind that it is going to be very likely that we will be able to request them to support us. And if we can get one more kind of major actor, and really hoping that it will be either Prussia or the UK, I think that we can kind of pull it off. It would be much easier if Prussia were Russia's ally instead of, you know, Austria-Hungary, because Prussia has a border with France, and having a border with France means that France will actually mobilize and commit most of its troops. But we are looking like we're winning this war, except for I don't think Russia sees the war goal at all, so this might just be a really, really long slathering, or maybe even Russia loses here, because Russia hasn't done anything to occupy Egypt, and so even though they're winning the war right now, I don't think that they enforce below 0, and if the UK, it's either going to be a white peace or the UK is eventually going to get there, because the UK keeps on getting successful landings in and then getting repelled back out. So UK manages to get humiliate on Austria after getting in like a dozen or a half dozen landings, or attempting a half dozen, getting in enough, and so they get the humiliation on Austria-Hungary. They only need to snap onto Russia for just a moment to get the humiliate on them. They unfortunately missed because they couldn't find the hole, and they landed on us instead, which is unfortunate. We're just sitting and defending. We're not really looking to mix it up, but this makes the UK so more valuable, because if the UK has humiliated Austria-Hungary, Austria-Hungary cannot join against the UK, which is a little bit of an interesting interaction. I don't think we've ever seen anything remotely in the situation or like in the sphere of before, but if we can get the UK to side on our side when we're going after Russia, then Austria-Hungary, despite the defensive pact, will not be able to join because they will be humiliated and unable to join against the UK. So we are really hoping that at the end of the war, you know, when attitudes reset, because we of course have this minus 1,000 situation here, that at the end of this we could maybe get them to support our independence, because that would just be so huge. Or if France humiliates Austria-Hungary, obviously that would work as well, because France already supports us, but it's looking like eventually they're going to I mean, if they keep just randomly landing Russia for just a moment, which is what they're doing, then they can enforce the humiliate on it, because it doesn't require they own the capital. It only requires they own any integrated state or incorporated state, although I think they've been landing up here, and I think that, oh, it is incorporated. I don't know if it starts out incorporated. These are not all incorporated, so it doesn't count. This is also something to keep in mind for war reparations now. These days, it does require an incorporated state, so Great Britain's really hard to enforce war reps on, because, you know, places like this, you know, out here, in the middle of nowhere, which Great Britain owns, not incorporated. The Falkland Islands, also not incorporated. So you cannot land these, or Guyana, which is kind of the old OG classic, you cannot land these for war reparations anymore. But we do push them out here. Russia's going to have the EU on us, which is only... they occupy this. I think it's probably going to be bugged out for us. But we're now just waiting for them to try and land, you know, up here, or for Russia to actually enforce the war goal that they started for, which is, you know, on Egypt. But they haven't done anything to that end, and I don't think they will, because the AI is poor at executing landings sometimes. In this case, yeah, I mean, well, we're not even seeing them attempt it, and we're not going to help them out with it, so it's either the UK's day, or we'll see. So post-war, we have a very significant issue. Russia has not welcomed us back into their bosom, and without that, we don't have their market, so we don't have access to, you know, not only the migration, although we are getting mass migration. Wait, why are we getting migration from them? They took us out of their market, though, is the critical idea we wanted to point out. And so even though we, you know, got our GDP all the way up to 4 million, this is the collapse following Russia kicking us out of their market, and there's not much we can do here. I think we're going to delete down some of our construction, but this is just not... We have to get back inside their market, otherwise this is just super Jover for us. We were building this kind of just at the back of the queue and kept on juggling it down. We're just going to let it finish rather than losing the progress on it, which is going to refund a bunch of authority to us, because it is right here where we have a bunch of decrees, and what that statute does is it decreases decree cost by 25%, so this is going to give us 100 authority because we have 4 decrees, and this part will be nice, but UK unfortunately did not reset their attitudes. They still don't like us because they're cautious. Prussia's also cautious, and so even though we can try and declare, we're just like, we're super slathered. This is just like really bad for us. Really not looking good. All of our industries are super dead right now. We have a bunch of trade routes to try and, well, I guess we need to put import prioritization on stuff, but we have a ton of trade routes to try and resolve this, and they're not really resolving it very well. So, I mean... let's just try some more. I do believe... oh, the French... both of these guys are embargoing, if I recall correctly. Both of these guys are embargoing the Russia, and so if we put in the routes, they don't do anything, which is kind of unfortunate. We simultaneously have control of our own market, and they can embargo us, which is just like really truly a vibe. But we can kind of, I guess, get some of this back, but like our markets, our prices are still really messed up. We still have a lot of stuff, you know, in the -75 sphere, or I guess not as much anymore, in the definitely in the +75 sphere, despite trying to solve that issue. We do get another company. The plan was to use it on the tools, and so we will do that, and we will try and export tools as best we can. I do think we had a couple export routes, but our economy is super messed up right now. It's just, we have convoys so we can run some trade routes, but I think the British... unless they lifted the embargo. Did they lift the embargo? Okay, it looks like they lifted the embargo on Russia, which is fantastic. We were thinking of trying to run a whole ton of routes with Great Britain to maybe change their attitude towards us, but I don't think that that's overall that effective, but it's kind of one of the few tools we actually have. Other than that, we're just like... that war really hurt us, and if Russia doesn't take us back in, we can't request to be back in. This is one of the subject interactions you can abuse if you're playing multiplayer and you have someone as a subject, is booting them out of your market really messes them up quite a bit, because we do not have a market set up to tolerate this, and we need to build convoys, run bigger trade routes, and actually just have a bigger sized economy in order to get this to work. We can, oh yeah, this is actually the point we missed. We needed to be exporting this, but even once we export this, we're still going to be in like really bad shape, and so I mean, I guess we put, yeah, this is just looking really not so good for us. I think we'll be able to recover, but it's going to take a while, and we're going to have to probably delete more construction. So Russia is being a menace, which is fine by us. Also, they accepted us back into their warm bosom, which is also fine by us, giving us a very funny looking, you know, graph here where we collapse, and now we're coming back. We're so back, baby. But you know, the more Russia just abuses people and takes these, like, 35 infamy provinces, the more we like it, because... they get the notorious action here. 79 infamy. This is going to really, really tank their relations with other countries. It might get them to, like, for example, break ties, or Austria-Hungary to break ties with them. See, that's not very dark green. The Ottomans are pissed. The Prussians are now pissed. Or here, the Prussians are pissed at those guys. If we go to Russia, actually, no, the Prussians are pissed at them. Look, Spain's pissed. Everyone's Great Qing is pissed. And so this is going to give us a lot more opportunity. I think we're going to move around some of our diplo interests, where maybe we could even get Qing to support our independence. I don't think so. We had that interest over there. We're going to try and see if we can get Qing. I think we have to keep the French one parked because France... Actually, no... I think we just get to keep our relation even if we don't have a shared interest. So we're going to put this in Spain and look to, or Iberia rather, and look to maybe get something done with Spain and or Great Qing, where they will help to support our independence. But this is really, really good for us that Russia's acting like a menace. This start overall has been pretty rough. I imagine, there we go, Prussia sides with Sweden, which puts us in a pretty good spot. Now, we are going to be at war with Prussia now, so this is going to switch to antagonistic, so there's going to be no shot that we could do this while we're at war. But after the war, this might reset to be something that we'd like. Unfortunately, we can't declare... during the last war would have been perfect, you know, when it was a 2v2 between GPs, you know, the USA and UK on one side over Egypt, which ended up being, roughly speaking, a white peace, and also Austria-Hungary and Russia. It would have been perfect if we could declare there, but since we are getting called into every single one of Russia's plays, we can't declare a war on them if they're already occupied in a big war, which leaves us with a few less tools, but hopefully we'll be able to peel off Spain and Great Qing. Really looking for opportunities, really kind of clicking this map mode a little bit aggressively to try and find spots. You know, the USA maybe could support us as well. Really, really, this is off the back of them just kind of, you know, this is like, as a player, you should never go over, like, 75 unless you're just going to go over 100 and you can afford to fight everyone, and Russia can't afford to fight everyone. This is like, this is just like, you're ruining your game here when you go for just peeling 3 states off of a European power. Alright, so this was working outstanding for us. We put an interest in, you know, Iberia. Spain agreed to support our independence. Now, we put one in the USA. USA is just willing. They came... Ooh, we're in the negotiations... Oh, wait. We had an interest. We both had an interest in Spain, and then we moved it so that we moved it to the Rhine. I wonder... Okay, we're just going to put one in Dixie, knowing that they are currently looking to support us at this very moment, and then we will request support from... Will Hanover be able to do anything? Screw it. They'll be able to hopefully do nothing. Baltic governance will also be important, but once we have this interest parked in the USA, we should be able to do it. Qing is extremely close, with only a -6 kind of interaction here that is opposing us. So if we come up just one level of attitude score, so if we get this up to 20, Qing will support us, and Qing will really be able to either meet shield or push, you know, kind of this side over here, which is going to be valuable. Our thing does finish, so we can add another consumption tax. I think we're just going to tax tea. And then once our interest is activated, I'm sure they will be willing to support our independence. So now we have a whole bunch of people willing to support us against the UK here. Now that we have not the UK, against Russia here, which is going to be really, really good for us. I think overall, this is probably enough to beat Austria, Hungary, and Russia, but we will just kind of bide our time. Did Ottomans drop out? Ottomans might have dropped out here. They were no longer supporting our independence, so that's going to be a bit unfortunate, and they are not into it at all. Actually, they're kind of close here, so we're going to move our interest over towards the Ottoman camp and look to improve relations with them and get them back in along with Great Qing, and once that happens, we should be in good shape, certainly in better shape than the EIC here. Russia in the peace deal, very annoyingly, gave away one of our states. Very annoying. They traded our state for them to kind of enforce and take all the states, which of course is big sad. I hate that interaction. It just feels so bad. But we are well on our way to getting kind of the last of the guard here in Qing. I think we're going to also put interest here in the Rhine and see if we can maybe get the Netherlands in as well, because the Netherlands did join in to protect Sweden. But it is unfortunate we just kind of randomly kind of lose a territory that actually has an enormous amount of resources and is fairly strong. We hadn't really built there. There's really not a lot of population, so it is what it is, but we are nonetheless sad and perturbed, as it were. Alright, after a little bit of interest shuffling, we have discovered that it is indeed, we do need to have an overlapping interest in order to get things through, but I think we have kind of set up as best we can, as many allies as we can to support us in independence. We have a Denmark. We were able to get Qing, but then we would need to have an interest park in North China, and we do not have as many interests as we'd like to be able to do that. We now have one in Spain or Iberia and one in Dixie. With that, we have supporting us, we have Denmark, we have France. France has a bunch of interests in a lot of places because they have a lot of navy, so that's good for us. We have Hanover. I don't know where Hanover has an interest that somehow this works, but okay. Ottomans just offered up a little bit of support. Sweden, who of course has taken our territory, but we'll forgive them, and the USA. And so I think we're in a really good spot to be able to declare for this next episode. I think that we are going to conclude the episode here. This one has been definitely a bit of a rough type of thing. We've gone 24 years, so the time is flying quite quickly here, and in those 24 years, we've mainly been focused on kind of two things as far as this episode goes. The first is this whole mini-game in increasing our autonomy, as well as trying to increase our autonomy and trying to coax ourselves a situation where we could get as many GPs as possible. We didn't get the guys who we were courting initially. We really wanted to get Great Britain, but that's never kind of been possible because they've just always been cautious. It's possible if you re-roll this multiple times that you can maybe get a good attitude with Great Britain, and this run is a whole lot easier than how it's been for us. But it has been a bit interesting, and we've also been focused on the economics of a little bit, kind of introducing a strategy I don't think we've shown off in any other video yet, although we have done it a little bit on stream, where we are intentionally not controlling any of the queue while acting as a subject, because as a subject, you don't want to put your buildings up for sale. You want it to be owned privately as much as possible, so rather than building them ourselves and then enabling privatization on them, something like this, instead of us doing that, we are instead letting the private queue build stuff, not privatizing anything, because if we privatize, this will allow the massive kind of Russian money to be able to just come in and buy our things. In fact, we're just going to take a quick save of the file, because if we swap countries now, what will happen is it'll break our ability to get achievements, and we're going to swap over to Russia just to kind of highlight this fact. We haven't even checked this, but I'm almost like completely positive that they are going to have some amount of investment pool. Look, they have 16.6 million. They have an enormous investment pool, and it is growing really fast. The AI underbuilds construction by a disgusting amount. He should have at least 3 times this construction, but with this level of construction, what will happen is the investment pool will kind of build up. And so if we open the floodgates as Finland, right, if we're playing as Finland here, if we open the floodgates for even just a moment, they'll just buy the buildings up. Our guys won't buy the buildings up. We don't have enough investment pool banked for that sort of thing. And so if we were to just nationalize any of this, or sorry, not nationalize, privatize any of this, Russia would just swoop in with their massive 16.6 million investment pool and just snipe it immediately, and we would get paid a whole lot less than we paid to construct the building. But not only that, we have very little pops. It's important to emphasize this, and the fact that they are working, that's not even our building, that's in Ingria. The fact that they are, while they are working and making money and profit, a huge portion of this profit is going to the balance rather than to wages. This is another way in which value is created, and while this is happening, it's going to Russia. if Russia owns the building, which is why it's so critical we are on interventionism and we're not on laissez-faire, which will, if we're on laissez-faire, then it force sells the building off. And so seems to be the real critical use for interventionism, is if you're going to play as a subject or if you're going to invest in other countries with the idea of gaining access to their economy, you also want to do this. Because if you're investing in other countries and you're on laissez-faire, then the other country does the same thing Russia would do with their enormous investment pool and just buy all the buildings up. And so we are really trying to avoid that, and that is why we have been playing this little game where we just kind of let the auto queue do the thing. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We are going to be editing this on some new editing software, so if anything's just horrific for whatever reason, please let me know. But other than that, have a good one.